Hello, and you're very welcome back to the Public Eye Business Podcast brought to you by Granite Exchange. I'm your host, Sarah Travers, and throughout this series I will be once again speaking with local entrepreneurs and business owners to learn more about how their companies have come to be, to gain insight into their growth and find out how they continue to innovate. So wherever you get your podcasts from, remember to keep an eye out for all new episodes and subscribe to stay up to date. Well, today I'm joined by Conor Cole, who's the Managing Director of Cole Groundworks. Conor, you're very welcome to the podcast studio.
Thank you.
So before we begin and get into the conversation, a little bit of background on Conor and his business. So Cole Groundworks Contracts is a multi-award-winning business founded by Conor in 2005. What started solely as a small team of professionals providing services to domestic and small commercial building contractors has grown to provide groundworks and civil engineering services across the UK and Ireland, with offices based in Travers, County Down, London and Dublin. Cole Contracts are delivering services to some of the biggest named construction companies in the world, and Conor himself has received many awards since founding his business. To list a few, Ulster Tatler Businessman of the Year, High Achiever of the Year, and he's been named as the People's Favourite in Northern Ireland Top 40 Under 40. He's also Civil Engineering Company of the Year. Now, it's Conor's hard work and dedication that's made his company what it is today. We'll be hearing more about that in a minute, continuing to expand in a very healthy manner. Conor has a personal interest in developing his workforce and his company, and is always striving to be the best in the business. Conor gets actively involved with his workforce on the ground, always trying to identify and research potential ways for the company to improve its range and quality of services. Conor, we had a bit of a chat before we pressed the record button, and you're a bit of a workaholic, I would think. You work all the time.
I think so, yeah. It just probably comes with the territory of what we're doing.
So it is about, building your own business, and anybody who Googles Cole Groundwork Contracts, they'll see that you're now one of the leading civil engineering companies in Ireland and in the UK. But it wasn't in the family, was it? You were a classic entrepreneur.
It wasn't, no. So Dad's background is mechanical engineering. After I done my A-levels, I had really no clue what I wanted to be. I got into the construction industry, took a year away from university to sort of see what I wanted to do.
What did you do during that time then?
I started off with a friend's father. He was a building contractor, bricklaying, and very soon I was building for him. I just couldn't see myself doing this for the rest of my life. So a close family friend who just lived very close to me worked for his dad, as his dad was a groundwork contractor as well. He was setting up it by himself, and he asked me would I go with him. So I went with him, and everything sort of begun from there.
And the rest is history. Why Groundworks then?
I don't really know. It's the thing about bricklaying, not that there's anything wrong with bricklaying, it was just, for me, it was doing that same thing day in, day out for the rest of my life. I enjoyed it. I loved it when I was doing it, but I just couldn't see 20 years from that period still having the same passion in it, or getting up every morning with something to sort of like a challenge. For me, after a while, I don't believe there'll be much of a challenge in it. With Groundworks, like the first day I started this guy, we were putting in concrete posts. The next day we were digging foundations. The next day it was drainage. The next day it was curbing. It was there's just so many aspects that this industry covered. Every day was different. Every day was a challenge. There wasn't two houses ever the same. Two projects were never the same. So it was just always a learning curve, and every day there was sort of a level of not so much excitement, but something that is going to be new today. I'm going to be sort of learning something new.
So you had that you like that challenge?
Yeah, I think I need that challenge. Yeah, I'm going to be that sort of person. Yeah,
I think a lot of people do. And Groundworks as well. Obviously, by the name, you're in there. First of all, you're getting the ground ready for something that at that stage is maybe just a design. So that's
Exactly,
very
yeah.
exciting as well to see what it actually turns into.
Yeah.
And if you don't get it right at that level, then, you know, you're
Everything's
asking for
messed
trouble.
up, yeah. And then we're also involved in the very finishing element. So we're first into a site and then we'll be last out.
So tell me what, I didn't realise that. So what do you do at the end then?
All the finishing work, so roads in,
Of course.
curbing, footpaths, hard landscape, like paved areas, wall, and just all of that landscape finish. So when you go into the grounds after place is finished, it's more or less everything you're visually seeing.
Must give you a real sense of pride then.
That's where a lot of the passion probably comes from, yeah. So you're looking at a finished job at the end, and people are admiring it. That's when you know you've been involved in that process of getting it to where it is. So that's probably where a lot of the passion comes from, yeah.
So what about starting your own business then? Tell us about that journey, because you're doing it for someone else. And at what point did you think, I could do this?
Right, okay. So after me, as I mentioned, I didn't have any clue of what I wanted to do. I mentioned that I went into working for my friend's father, bricklaying. We started then. My other close family friend came up. He was leaving his father to start out on his own doing Groundworks. I decided to give this a go. Straight away, I loved it. Marty, the guy who I went to work for, he was an extremely hard worker, and I really looked up to him. I loved it from day one. It covers a large range of jobs, and we were doing many different things from, as I mentioned, curbing one day, brick paving the next day, flagging, foundations the next day. Marty expected me and all the staff to be the best at every job we did, and to be honest, we probably were. He wouldn't accept nothing less.
So is that a really good thing to have that person that drives you, but you respect?
It definitely is. I think today's era, we're seeing in the workforce, like when I worked for Marty, if you done something wrong, you sort of were worried about your boss thinking of this opinion. Nowadays, it's moved into a different sort of era, and guys don't really have that care or passion anymore for the job. But back then, yeah, it was part of the biggest probably driver, and it's carried me right through till today. Like that same motto goes, like if it's not the best, it won't do, basically.
And you hear that a lot. You know, if you're trying to get anything done these days, it's so hard to get somebody in the first place, and then it's seeing it through to make sure that all the wee niggles, or if there's something not right, that it is perfect. That pride in your work.
Yeah, exactly. It's very, very hard to get that, but I think Marty instilled that in me from an early age, and it's sort of carried through. But after being with Marty for a couple of years, different contractors we worked for were approaching me on the back foot of Marty saying, would you work for us? Would you do bits for us? Which I wasn't willing to do.
Uncomfortable.
Or comfortable. No, I was loyal to Marty, and I loved working for him. He was a very, very big part of my learning career, and at a stage he even stated to me a few times I've probably overtaken his level at a young age.
Gosh.
I knew I wanted to do more in it, and I knew probably I had more to give to it, so I decided to go back to university to do civil engineering.
Oh, right.
So I was hoping to maybe, you hear of these students who do a couple of days and they're not in a couple of days. I was hoping to maybe balance work with university.
That was tough.
Yeah, so I went, started Jordanstown, and went into the class just to more or less start that new cycle, if you want to call it, and loved it. But a lot of the people in the class were coming out of school. They were agreeing to the fact of construction. Everything was just new to them. It was just like learning a new subject in school. Whereas I had that experience. At this stage, I was reading drawings. I was building these jobs.
You were living it.
I was living it, yeah. But I did, to be honest, feel wasted in school, and it's not the position I wanted to be in. I didn't want to be. I seen myself as an engineer. As if I was growing into an engineer, I was going to be more office based, involved more in the background of things, and I couldn't see myself enjoying that either. I wanted to be back out on site, so I left.
Right. And was that a big decision for you?
It didn't seem it at the time because it was just what I wanted. It seemed to be at the time I went back to my careers teacher in the Abbey to apply for UCAS to go to it. It seemed to be a bigger issue for my careers teacher and for the lecturers in the university that I was leaving. They seen, obviously I had on-site experience and I probably would have done well in this role, but I just didn't want to be there. And although it maybe seemed a big decision, even my parents weren't overly happy with it, but for me it was very, very easy. It's what I wanted to be. I wanted to go back to work.
So at what stage did you drop out, if you call it that?
Probably 6 months into it.
I'd love to talk to you more about that. I might come back to that because,
Okay, no problem.
we hear about this, that young people these days being on these trajectories. You feel you've got to do one path and one path alone. And you knew in your gut there was something that wasn't quite right.
Yeah.
And you were brave.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, but then, was that failure? Was that quitting? Or was that absolutely the right thing to do?
For me, it wasn't failure. It definitely wasn't failure. And like failure, some of the things that make everybody nowadays.
Exactly.
I wouldn't look at it at that. And to be honest, it's a decision I never regret. I don't regret it for 1 second. It was the right decision. It's what I wanted to be. And for me, to spend a career in something that I wasn't overly passionate about wasn't going to wash with me. So.
And how long would that university course have been if you stayed?
4 years,
Right.
including a year on site with going on a placement with somebody. Don't get me wrong, I would have enjoyed it and it would have been good, but it wasn't where I wanted to be at that stage, and it wasn't for me. So.
And do you think not having that degree or piece of paper at the end has held you back any?
No.
Right.
I was told it would. By everybody. Basically, he was told at one stage it was going to be a bum, not by any family member, that I was going to a construction site basically as a labourer, and I wouldn't make anything of it. And
so were you told your earning potential might be affected?
Not so much my earning potential, just that I have an awful lot of potential in this industry. The lecturers were saying that I was because with the on-site experience, not that I was better than anybody else, but I was probably leaps and bounds ahead of the rest of the class at that level. I was older in the class, so I was probably a bit more mature in things. Plus, I had 3 or 4 years on-site knowledge already.
And that's what was calling you. So what happened next?
So I left. Marty, the guy who I mentioned, was wanted me to go back to work from day one, and I wanted to go back to work from day one, but some of the days I couldn't go that he wanted me to go. And I got the opportunity to do just a private patio for a friend was a landscape gardener, and he had somebody who wanted a patio done, so they approached him. Doesn't know anybody. He asked me, and I said I would do it. And at that stage, I had no tools, I had no van, I had nothing. So I went in my car and gathered up tools, and basically from week one, every week, rather than probably going out and spending what I was earning, I was going and buying new tools, and with the money I was earning and starting to build things from there. And one job led on to another job, it led on to another job, and just gradually things started to take off for me. And
was it constant? Was it literally you weren't out of work?
Thankfully, touch wood, from that day, I've never had a day out of work, no. Never.
From that day, and how long ago is that now?
That's now 18 years.
You need a day off soon, I think, Conor. Yeah. And I think the work's going to keep coming. So, right, you're in your car. At what point did you buy the van? Did you get bigger? Did you think, I've got to grow this business now?
It's not. I don't think it's so much that I thought I need to do this. Obviously, the car wasn't ideal from day one. So, as I said, everything that I was earning, I was putting back in. I didn't have tools. There was a couple of local companies in Uri here that knew of me. I was hiring equipment off them because at that stage I didn't have the money to buy equipment. Some guys, for instance, Kevin Clark and Casey Hire, gave me my first whacker plate and console and different things, different tools, and told me to, rather than paying them at the end of the month, to pay them off as I could afford it rather than hiring this. So
that's so decent.
It was, yeah. I'll never forget that, to be honest. And gradually saved up enough money to buy a van. took on a guy with me. I become two guys, and gradually things just started taking off. Contractors that I had worked for previously through other employers started hearing that I was out on my own, and started approaching me to see would I take on other work. I was hesitant at the start because I went to the guy who I worked for and said, "Does this affect you? I don't want to be standing on your toes." He told me by no means. And to be honest, Marty was a supporting block for me back then as well. So the guy Marty who had employed me, he'd give me all the support and all the backup that I needed. Anytime I was stuck or in a query, I'd call him up and he would be open and honest with me and give me any advice I needed.
This podcast is sponsored by Granite Legal Services, a niche business law practice located in the heart of Newry City. We provide legal advice and representation to individuals and companies alike across a wide range of industries on an assortment of legal matters which can affect a business, such as corporate, commercial, employment, dispute resolution, regulatory and compliance. We focus on providing legally sound, commercial and practical advice to our clients. To get in touch, contact 028 30 262200 or visit www.granitelegalservices.co.uk to find out more about the firm and our services.
So much support and from the industry that, you know, some could have seen you as a competitor.
Yeah.
But there was obviously enough work going around at that point.
That was the
boom time.
2005, so it was still part of the boom, before the recession kicked in.
All right, okay. So you had, is it fair to say, no plan as such about growing the business? It was just evolving at this stage.
It was just evolving, yeah. It was I knew it's what I wanted to do. How far I wanted to take it at that stage, I wasn't fully sure. I never really thought about it. We were busy doing the day-to-day. We didn't really think about goals and plans and the final position we wanted to be in or where I wanted to be in 5 years. I just knew this is what I wanted to do, and from the very start I just wanted probably to be the best about it.
So you're kind of like a day-to-day person, or you were then anyway?
I was then, yeah. Well, I was probably always 6 months ahead of myself, but not further afield.
Why do you think you didn't look ahead?
Probably I was 20 years of age. At 20 years of age, I don't think any of us has grew up. We're still living day to day, regardless of what anybody thinks. You don't think of tomorrow. You don't think of repercussions of anything.
So now we're fast forward 18 years, and you were telling me that you've now got at least 70 people on the books working for you.
It mightn't just be that many, but it's up. It could be up as far as that many.
I mean, that's incredible. So, yeah. At what point did you decide, right, you know, I do need a plan. I have to grow the business. I can't just keep going, 6 months at a time. How did that happen?
I think a lot of that basically, we worked through the recession. I wasn't out of work, thank God, but we hit very, very difficult times through that. Like, everybody looks in from the outside and thinks it was a very, very pretty journey. To be honest, there was nothing really pretty about it.
And the construction industry was just decimated here, wasn't it?
It was destroyed, yeah, and everything about it. People was leaving, construction companies were going bankrupt, people just weren't getting paid because the principal contractors were just taking on any jobs at any money and not paying the smaller guys, because the smaller guys are the easy targets. But I, regardless of how hard it was, giving up wasn't an option for me. It wasn't that I thought, should I give up or not give up? It's what I love doing.
I suppose in a way, the fact that you hadn't built the business as much at that time maybe saved you, because you didn't have as many people dependent on you.
Probably, but it didn't affect my workforce in any stage. The guys were always paid, my suppliers were always paid. The person who probably suffered from this was only me.
Okay.
Because regardless, I was their employer, I was taking them on to pay them a wage, they had to be paid. So I don't think anybody could ever say they weren't paid or they were paid late by me. It was always, everybody was always paid in time. It just, it just was probably hard for me. Like my accountant said to me numerous times that I don't know many people that would have went through and kept going. But for me, it's not there was no other option. I could have left, went to work for somebody else. I could have done numerous things, but it's not what I wanted to be. I wanted to be in this position. I wanted to be in this role.
And was it hard mentally to get through that?
I think if I had had a day off or a week off, I think mentally it would have been an issue. But no, I can't. Thankfully, thank God, I haven't been the person like that. I'll be to suffer from any mental difficulties like that. So
you just keep getting up and you keep getting on, as we've been saying.
Yeah.
You don't take that time. You don't allow the thoughts to creep in.
No.
You just keep busy.
Kept busy, yeah. Always kept busy, and it turned. There's no point in saying it didn't. 2011, 2010, I started working in the UK for a Northern Ireland contractor. There was people who they were working for the client basically, who identified strengths in us. So we finished that project. It was in Avonmouth, just beside Bristol. And
that was the first gig across the water?
It was the second gig. The first gig didn't go too well.
Okay, well, you know.
First gig, the contractor ended up not paying the full bill, which was part of the recession curve. But this is the second gig, and it went very well. We worked extremely hard, and the company we were working for was working for a bigger tier 1 contractor who was working for a client. The client wasn't anything involved in the construction industry, so they had employed guys as construction managers for them, who the tier 1 contractor would basically report to. These guys moved on to other roles after that project and started contacting us to come in and the new companies they're with to contact us and get us involved in other work. So
that's brilliant.
They contacted us, we got involved, and so we kept that thing going for these guys. And then probably in 2013 I got engaged to Emma, and I thought, this is real now. I'm growing up. I need to really put my head down, and this has to be my career. And that you were saying about when did I think that was probably the stage I thought about it. And then 2015 is probably when it really kicked off, the year we got married.
So tell me about Emma. Where did you meet her? How did you find time to have a girlfriend?
Emma was a friend of a friend. So most weekends, or not most weekends, at that stage I was home a lot. And then 2000, and before I went to England, I'd met Emma. And me and her kicked off really, really well from more or less day one. Emma come from a family, her dad was a joinery contractor, so she was used to that atmosphere and her dad working away. And to be honest, she supported me. She wasn't like this needy girlfriend who wanted me always there.
Well, they say a daughter usually looks to someone like her father with the same work ethic.
I don't know about that, but yeah, so Emma, to be honest, probably made it easier for me because she did support me. And when we got engaged, she knew that work for me was very, very important. And she knew that, not that it was my first priority, but it was the very, very high priority for me. And supported me. She knew I worked day and night. We were trying to get our house done for our wedding. We were trying to save for a wedding, so we had all this going on at the same time. And it was just the way it was. I was barely home at that stage. Anytime I was coming home, we were working at the house.
But she understood this, and she was supportive.
She was, yeah.
Well, it must be going all right, because I believe you've 5 children now. So
5 kids, yeah.
She stuck by you.
She stuck by me, yeah.
And at one stage came into the business.
Yep. So as things grew for us, I used to be the person who would price the work, who would do the work, who would invoice the work, who would do the accounts, but it was becoming too much volume, more than too much for me. I was willing to do anything, but I had to stay up all night to do it. But Emma, at that stage, it was Emma worked as well.
What did she do?
She was in accounts as well, just for other local firms. And
that was useful.
Yeah. So on a Sunday morning, after we got we were married at this stage, Emma would have helped me out on a Sunday morning, done the accounts for that week up every
Very
week.
romantic Sundays together.
Yeah. And that's the way it went for a couple of years, and things gradually got busier and busier. We built an office. Emma more or less was there for the overseeing of all that. We had our second child, third child, and it become probably too much for Emma, so Emma took a nearly back seat, and we employed more people for the office. And
so tell me about that, taking on more people. We've heard how much you did and like to do yourself. Was it hard to step back and kind of relinquish control?
I don't think I ever stepped back. My role hasn't really changed. I'm still doing what I've done very early on. I'm very much involved with tender process. I'm still very much involved with invoicing, very much involved with all the aspects still. It's become more, as I said, more volume of stuff. So although I am as involved with all these aspects, I'm maybe not just given, I don't have to do all the nitty gritty for everything. So the first guy I met was the first project I was called back to do in the UK. I bumped into an Irish guy working over there as well, PJ. PJ was a very, very good worker. When we went to the site, there wasn't many good workers on the site. We found a lot of guys were very slack and didn't really, just a typical...
Is that the bums you were talking about earlier?
Not so much the bums, but guys who they got up in the morning, they went to work to come home. It wasn't about work or a passion for them. It was just about a wage and living week to week. PJ very much wasn't like this. PJ was completely passionate about his job. Couldn't do enough. If you asked him to work on to 9 o'clock at night, he would have been working on without any extra money for this contract we were working for. For him, work was part of his passion as well. So across PJ's path again in 2014 or 15, we were working for one of the largest construction companies in the world, a company called Biggs. I wasn't working direct to them. I was working to a company, like a larger groundwork contractor. So we were in sort of like a finishing crew. They had a crew in that was, or a gang of lads on their workforce that was sort of preparing work and doing the digger work, and then we were coming in doing the final finishes and the finesse basically on the job to hand over. And I was bouncing maybe through 3 or 4 sites for this contractor, and PJ was a site manager on one of these sites. The tier 1 contractor everybody was working for, Big had approached me and asked me would I tender for work for them. Again, I said, look, I don't want to be stepping on the toes of these bigger guys who are employing me. He said they're not, this company's that big, they might have 30 or 40 different civils contractors working for them. So that was something that, this was the start of the really kick-off for us.
And what did that mean to you at the time, to have, that name, Boygs, just that reputation, to come to you and say, we want you?
It was very good, but at the same time it was worrying, because with the smaller contractor I was working for, I was dealing with somebody on a personal level. Biggs is, to describe them best, probably a big animal. They're a monstrosity of a business. Like the owner, nobody would ever see him or hear of him. It's delegated right down through numerous people. Like the site team on this site was bigger than everybody I had working for me.
Wow.
So it was nerve-wracking, but at that point I wasn't overly considering or taking too much heed. Again, I was making okay money what I was doing. I was happy, but the company I was working for went bankrupt.
Oh, right.
So that morning before they had went bankrupt, I had said to PJ, if I don't get paid today, because it's now month 3 without getting paid, I'm pulling my tools and I'm pulling off site. So we had started to do this. Plant hire company had come in, and they were taking the keys out of their diggers, so they hadn't been paid either.
Gosh.
And then we heard that this company had been in the liquidation that morning. So I was leaving site, and the Biggs site manager came down. First time we met this guy, he's project manager. He came down and asked could he have a word with me. So I went up into the office, and they said, look, they've been watching me for a long period of time, others. This wasn't the site that approached me initially. Other sites have mentioned that they want you to tender for work. We would like you to finish this job. You're aware of what's happening. At that point, I said no thanks.
We haven't been paid.
I haven't been paid by the contractor. They went into liquidation. Obviously, for some reason, they're doing 4 or 5 big projects for yous. Is there a reason why yous haven't paid them? It turned out that Biggs are actually being very good to this contractor, so they're actually paying them in advance. They're paying them 2 weeks in advance.
Wow.
And the company obviously had issues elsewhere. So it was a Friday morning, and they gave me the opportunity to finish that project, which I said I would think about, and I would come back on, if I was doing it, I was to come back on Monday and finish out. So over the weekend, gathered up. At that stage I had probably 2 gangs of 3 men maybe working for me.
And were you paying them?
My own men, yeah. I was paying them.
Mm-hmm.
And so I took the shot at it.
Right.
Biggs, for me, was another one of these parts of my life that I'll never forget. They knew it was a small company. They knew this was too big for me. The work was easy. They knew that the work aspect was easy for me, but probably the financing of it and the cash flow issues.
Yeah.
Like, we're talking figures here. At this stage, I was probably turning over maybe 200,000 a year. This project had 10 weeks left on it, and just over £500,000 in 10 weeks to do. So the jump up here was massive for me.
And was that an agonising weekend, or did you just have a feeling again in your gut?
It wasn't an agonising weekend, because they give me their word, and that's probably one thing I do. I take people on their word. I went home and spoke to Emma. This was, I think this was just after we got married. Sorry, and I said, look, I'm going to go for it. The work's easy. I'm not concerned about it, to be honest. I think I can finish it early. It was the cash flow, but Biggs had promised me they were going to pay me weekly and do different things. So, to be fair to Big, they were the best. Started day one. We ramped up to probably 20 men over a week. Guys were brilliant. Worked day and night. We were 5 weeks behind a program with 10 weeks to finish, so 15 weeks work to do. At the end of this project, there was the variation in the job, which was an extra 3 or 4 weeks work that was going to come after this. So my biggest concern at this stage wasn't the work we were doing. It was more the company who I was working for, who was always filling me a work this last 2 or 3 years, was gone. Who was I going to go to work for after this?
Yeah.
That's what I was more concerned about. We finished the job. We finished the job plus the variation project, which was, so if you can imagine, we've done 14 weeks worth of work back in 10 weeks. We've done the variation, which is now 3 or 4 weeks within that period, and had the job over a week early.
Oh my goodness.
So we impressed Biggs an awful lot, and that led on to straight into another school for them. It led into Queenmere University in London. Oh. It led into Ebury Bridge project in London, and sort of that was the big takeoff from there.
So just that, what I'm hearing all the way through your life so far is that doing the right thing, honourable. You know, if you've given your word, you see something through, and you respect others who do the same.
Exactly, yeah.
And it seems to work.
I think so.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
far,
you haven't been burnt so far, but and obviously that good trusting of your gut as to who's giving you
probably
a word that you.
I wouldn't
can
say
trust.
I haven't been burnt before. I've been burnt many a time, but with these big decisions, yeah, it's been.
And that's business too, isn't it? In construction,
business,
I mean, there's going to be
business.
times that you do get burnt. And how do you find you deal with that kind of thing?
It used to affect me a lot, because at that stage, at a stage, to be hit by as much as £1,000 of a loss was massive.
Yeah.
But without those lessons, I wouldn't be where I am today. I think that's part of every learning curve. It's like everybody needs to fail to better themselves. I don't look at. Don't get me wrong. If we fail at something, or we make a mistake at something, you'd be annoyed, but at the same time, it's a lesson learned. You look at it, you evaluate it, you see where did they go wrong, how can we stop this from happening again, and I think that makes any business stronger.
And what do you think's been your greatest achievement to date since starting your own business?
It's I don't know. I don't know if I can put any one thing to. It's hard to say one thing that I'm completely grateful for. I don't think it's fair to say there's one thing, but it's I don't know. It's some of the things we've some of the projects we've undertook, carried over that period that I talked about, that 4 or 5 year period from 2015 to 2020. For me, that was a big achievement to turn from what we turned over in a year to doubling our turnover in 10 weeks.
Wow.
That was probably one, and the projects we took on for the next 4 or 5 years was a massive achievement. Looking back now, at the time it didn't feel it. It was just being busy. I suppose one of the other biggest achievements I could say was meeting and managing to interest some of what I would class as the best individuals in the industry. So that guy PJ I talked about, we come across another guy, Johnny, which would be one of our senior management team. And I was for approaching Johnny to come work for me, and Johnny approached me on the same day, said he'd be interested. So interesting these guys to come work with a small contractor. They're coming from tier 1 contractors to work for me.
And investing in your workforce is really important to you. What do you do for your employees?
I try to do everything I can. Some people tell me I do too much, and they're like spoiled kids. But I try to like when I bring guys on, I would rather bring guys on on site at a lower level and train them up our way. I think like people who do drive before their driving test, they've got a lot of bad habits and different things. So we like to train up, but our guys, we want to train up to the highest level we can. We want them all trained in different plant and equipment, and we want to invest in our guys because that's probably the biggest part of the business.
And are you heavily involved in the recruitment process?
Yeah, I'm still very much involved with every aspect of the business, yeah.
So what impresses you? Is it skills or is it attitude?
Definitely attitude. And then skills can be learnt, or it's attitude and attitude to life, probably first of all. If they've got a good attitude and they've got good passion in what they're doing, I think the skills can be trained and the skills will come.
But they have a good life when they work with you, so looking after them, that's something you do.
That's one thing I do, and I try to be flexible with all the guys, so yeah. What do you think?
So, I mean, there are lots of people that are doing the same as you. You definitely have a fabulous attitude, and you're very modest and you're very humble and you work very, very hard. But how do you set your business apart from others in the industry? Because that's great and word of mouth is wonderful. But if you're taking on bigger contracts, maybe across the water and further afield, how do you feel that people pick up on that? And it's not just the cheapest price.
No, I think you've mentioned the word 2 minutes ago. I think attitude's a big thing. Without sounding arrogant, I do truly believe that we probably offer the best service in the industry. Part of our culture that I've always had, who's come from probably Marty, is no matter what we do, we always do it to the best of our ability. Sometimes with different people's strengths and weaknesses, that might have to be corrected or perfected through snags and so on. But we always feel that we do give it the best we can. I think there aren't many business owners as hands-on and involved as I am. And this carries right through our senior management team. All the guys are the exact same. Any client knows that they can pick up the phone at any stage to me and my senior management alike. And we'll be there probably the next morning. I'm still known to drive through the night to be on jobs for the next day, for that morning to solve out any issues or to iron out any problems.
And is that sustainable, Conor? I mean, can you keep doing that forever?
People keep saying this to me. I can't see how it's not sustainable. Probably if you're doing it every day of the week, probably not, no. But and as I get older, I probably feel myself getting tireder. But it is very much sustainable. Yeah, it's look, we're human beings. We adapt to what we have to do. You're a mother. You know, there's nights you've had your kids have been up all night, not sleeping or sick, and you've adapted. Tonight you may plan to get a good night's sleep, and your kid might keep you up all night. But that's just the way life is. If there's an issue, we address it and we deal with it and we get on with it.
And you're flexible.
We're flexible.
You just get on with it, and you obviously love what you do, and that's what gets you out of bed in the morning as well.
Yeah, I definitely love what I do. That's probably the reason why I left the engineering initially to go into actually the physical end or the practical end of it. Passion for me is probably the biggest driver for any business. If you don't have passion in your business, I don't believe it's going to work. I look at every job's you're only as good as your last job, basically. And I think if everybody had that attitude, and things would run a lot easier for everybody.
Absolutely. And a lot of people will be listening to this, maybe wanting to start their own business or have started their own business. And the podcast is all around entrepreneurship. But what's the hardest part of being an entrepreneur, would you say?
Probably at different stages in different people's lives. Being an entrepreneur, in my opinion, would be different. I wouldn't class myself as an entrepreneur, but others would. I don't look at it that way. But like, it's different now from it was at the very beginning. At the very beginning, I was able to put 100% time into everything. Now you've got kids and a wife.
5 kids.
Yeah, and that becomes part of that's a massive part of my life. And that's what it's all about now. I'm doing this for my family, and my workforce's families. So.
Do you spend enough time with the kids, do you think?
Probably not, no. But as I said, Emma has been a rock through it all. Without her behind me, wouldn't be here today.
And they're very little at the minute. I mean, you've still got ones keeping you awake during the night.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think you'll have any more? Is that it now?
It's a risky question. Yeah. I don't know. I think now, like, our family's an important thing, and a large family we have. I think Emma would be happy to have more kids. It's just the practicality of it all. I don't know if it's practical with cars and different things, but
yeah,
it's hard to say.
It's hard to say. You obviously manage to make time for it all, but it's extremely busy. Do you have any spare time?
Not really.
No.
Any spare time now is spent just with them. So the weekends I try and give them as much time as I can.
And what about them coming into the business? Would you be interested to build a family business?
That's what it's all about for me, yeah. It's like building a brand for me is, like people talk about, it's not always to do with the money aspect of it. So building a brand is very important for me, and I think that's what we've done as a business. We mightn't be the biggest construction company in the UK, but we're definitely becoming one of the most recognised for what we do.
Any of them, I know they're so small at this stage, but any showing any interest in the business?
Yeah, the boy, so of my oldest we by 7, he was digger mad, and as he's growing up now, he's becoming football, but he still has the weekends he'll still be with me. And now my second wee boy, he's just turned 2, so he won't let me go everywhere I go. He wants to be with me at the weekends, and he's getting so I do see it, and I see. Like, I wouldn't want to say just the boys, because I'm happy for if the girls want to get involved. I'd love that. Ideally, that's what I'd like it to be. I'd like it to be my kids growing into it and running it and taking it to another level further than what I can do. And as I say, for me, it's not all about me and my family, but the guys who have helped me get to where I am today, to involve them and their kids. Hopefully, like, that's something I'd love to see as well.
Well, you've mentioned some key people through your life. You remember them, and I'm sure there are many people that will remember you for the start that you gave them and the investment that you put into them. What's next then for Cole Groundworks, Conor?
I don't know. As a business, we're starting to grow into new sectors, and we're one of the first construction companies to fully embrace and live in an environmental policy. We've been involved, I mentioned earlier before this interview started, about being involved in HVO.
Which is, just for people?
it's hydrogenated vegetable oil, so it's a direct drop-in replacement for fuel.
Okay,
So-
and that's where we need to be, looking at alternatives.
Yeah, so we've got involved in that. We've built the first fully green HVO fuel terminal in Cork, in Ringaskiddy in Cork,
Wow.
for a client. Yeah.
And how do you feel about that, being on that sustainability journey as well?
Oh, we love it. So we are actually the first Irish contractor to turn all our plant and equipment to HVO in 2019.
Really?
Yeah.
This is coming a bit late in the interview. This is
Yeah.
this is absolutely fascinating. So, you know, the planet is very important to you too, and being that responsible business.
It's just tidying up the entire industry. Construction industry, I think, has been it's been sort of like a second resort for, you mentioned earlier about the university, that you should follow the university. Construction was always seen as a secondary option, or if you don't do so well at school, you can go into construction. For me, it's the complete opposite. Some of the biggest wage earners in this world are now earning it through construction. The biggest houses you'll see and on your drive home this evening will be construction workers, and for me that's part of it. And the construction work or industry, through health and safety and different aspects, although some of it might be over the top and silly, it is tidying itself up and it's becoming a real key business. And anything, it's part of every country's, it's the main aspect of every country now, basically.
Well, that's it, and it's legally required as well.
Yeah, but what's coming next for us, going back, that would be we want to continue to grow in that new era of construction, of a construction company, with huge growth plans ahead of us now in the UK and in Ireland, but we're now delving into France, so we'll be hopefully starting there soon, and then eventually further afield. There's discussions of potential projects coming up further afield again on the other side of the world. So we are focusing on day to day at the moment, but that is on the picture, and hopefully it's around the corner for us.
If only you could clone yourself, that would be great. Congratulations on everything that you've built and all of the success that's still to come, I'm sure, for Cole Groundworks. But final question, ask it to all of the guests who sit where you are, Conor. It's about the purpose of this podcast, which is to inspire existing business owners and those ambitious entrepreneurs out there to grow their businesses by offering a unique insight into the success of businesses such as yourselves at Cole Groundworks. But we've talked about university, we've talked about all the changes, the gut reactions, all of that. But final question, what advice would you give to people who may have a business idea but have no idea where to begin or are unsure as to whether that risk is worth taking?
Go for it. As cliche as it sounds, I think that is the true thing. If I believe if it's a business idea but you still want to live the good life and do the life that you're currently having, it might be a difficult one to carry through and be successful at. I think you need a passion. I think it's very, very important that you have passion and you're dedicated to give up some things. Nobody starts with hundreds of thousands in the bank. I mentioned they started in a Peugeot 306 with a long-tailed shovel. Take it step by step. For me, I was small, and I done what I could, just what I could manage. I done on it, and I built on this. Rather than being a sprint, I looked at it as a long journey and a marathon, basically. People say Rome wasn't built in a day, and it was an ongoing thing. So for me, it all begins with that first step and taking that first step. But it's very, very important to follow through with it. I mentioned briefly earlier on one of your other questions about the risk in different people's lives at different periods. For me, that risk of setting up a business, as small as the regret of not doing it, would be huge, especially if you're passionate about it. Make sure your finances are in check and look after the small details, and the big details will start to come and look after themselves. And it's important to remember, though, it's not just about the first step. When you take it, it's really important you have to follow through. But if you have the skills and dedication to keep going at it and the passion, I think it all will come to light, yeah.
Wonderful advice. Thank you so much to Conor Cole from Cole Groundworks for joining me today for another fantastic episode of the Public Eye podcast. We'll see you again very soon. Thanks, Conor.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
This podcast was recorded in Granite Podcast Studio. Interested in starting up your own podcast but don't know how? Granite Podcast Studio can help. Record your podcast in our state-of-the-art studio, which is based in the heart of Newry City. Our studio has cutting-edge and user-friendly technology and can seat up to 4 people. We also provide an editing service for our team, using your guidance and editing notes to provide you with a flawless finished product, leaving your listeners wanting more. For more information on how you can get started, visit www.granitepodcaststudio.com.